Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes. This is episode 59, the very last episode. We'll mostly be focusing on spoilers of the new set. No, just kidding, just kidding. I don't really know anything about Destiny these days anymore. It is rather the final episode, lamenting, celebrating this game that I put a lot of my time and effort into for quite some time. I know many of you out there still love dearly. And this is my opportunity to basically say goodbye, Star Wars Destiny. You will definitely be missed. In a fairly shocking twist, FFG decided to lay off not only workers at their establishment, but also have laid off this particular game. Most of their card games have been getting about a 5-year shelf life. Destiny was about to enter, or was entering, the really rocky year 4 of a card game. That's the year in FFG games where you go, I don't know, man. You start looking around, you're like, I kind of feel like this might not go a lot longer. And then you tell yourself, no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. There's just longer delays than usual. Organized play seems less interested, but it's going to be fine. And unfortunately, Destiny didn't even get to do that year. So that's unfortunate. It's almost better, seriously, to be deprived of year 5, which is like a really sad year where normally it's like, everything's fine. We're definitely not canceling the game. Game's canceled. I don't know. Did you buy everything we wanted you to buy? Thank you. So maybe it's good that FFG won't be running a really bad 5th year, and it's an opportunity for people to potentially take over the game and run it, quote, the way they wanted to run it. That's a really interesting next step for Destiny. A lot of card games try this thing where you have a really dedicated, excited group of players and content creators continue on a game that you love, and in my experience, inevitably, it doesn't go that great. Apparently, the Netrunner one is going pretty well, so that's exciting news. The Star Wars CCG is still going. I believe the Star Trek CCG is going. I actually got into the Star Wars CCG long after it was dead and was really impressed by the dedication. The downside, of course, is that if you thought it was hard to grow Destiny before, it is so hard to grow a dead card game. Like, you're just usually hanging on for dear life, and you have the big event, and like 8 people come to the local thing, and it's tough. It's really tough. It's one of the reasons why I left Star Wars CCG. I really did enjoy the game, but I just kind of wanted to play a game that was alive and that had that opportunity to grow and get big and meet new people. And that's where I want to start today, really, is that I want to thank everyone that I met in the Star Wars Destiny community. It was really great. I met so many people I enjoyed. I enjoyed very much being a content creator, talking to people, going to tournaments. Los Angeles had such an amazing, vibrant scene that first year. We'd have these local, I don't remember what day of the week, it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and we'd get like 40 people at Paper Hero Games. So shout out to Paper Hero Games. Shout out to the LA community that kind of fell apart with Spirit of Rebellion, to be honest. I'll get back to that later. But boy, that was a fun time. It's one of, if not my favorite times in a card game. I'd say the only one that rivals it is the Star Wars LCG, but that's only because I made like 5 friends that I'm just still friends with, and we're just like good friends, and we met in that game. But yeah, Star Wars Destiny, what a great ride. This game sort of came out of nowhere. I just remember so well being like, okay, I'm kind of feeling burned by FFG. I'm not going to play another FFG game seriously. Like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. They make great games, so I'll play for fun, but I'm just not going to play them seriously. And then they showed Star Wars Destiny. I was like, perfect. Dice and cards. I'll play with my daughter. I won't take this seriously. How could one take seriously a game with dice and cards? This is perfect. And then I started playing it on Tabletop Simulator, and it was so good. I couldn't believe it. How could they have mixed cards and dice so well? And that is just one of my very favorite times is playing on Tabletop Simulator before the game got released and throughout Awakenings. The game was just such an elegant game. I take a move, you take a move. It allows me to plan really far ahead because I know I'm going to do this, which is going to force them to do this. Then I'm going to do this, which is really going to force them to do that unless they make a mistake. And it just kind of felt like I was playing a really awesome version of chess, which was a game that I really liked and was my first competitive game. I really, really loved Awakenings, and I still really love Awakenings. I would actually be tempted to like try to start a local Awakenings only Destiny thing or something. You know, it's just that's how much I liked the gameplay of Destiny. And to be perfectly honest, perhaps it at some point got back to that. I don't know. Once I left, I kind of lost track of all the changes and all the new sets. But boy, I really remember fondly Awakenings. That's really one of my very, very favorite times. So yeah, I am definitely sad to see Destiny go. I figure finally it's time for me to talk about why I left Destiny, because one of the things is when I left, I didn't make announcements and put all over Facebook and Reddit that Tanagrams is done with Destiny. I didn't want to do that because I felt like I still had a pretty outsized voice and people might take too seriously like the fact that I'm leaving the game. Because the fact that I'm leaving the game doesn't mean anything. If you love the game, that's awesome. Keep going. So the reason I left was sort of FFG being FFG. Like the nice thing about Destiny for me is I came in knowing how FFG operates. I had played a number of games that they had killed and that I liked, and I knew sort of the trajectory of like year 1 is awesome. Year 2 is pretty darn good. They're still pretty invested. By the time you get to year 3, you can see FFG pulling back in a lot of ways, not having all their maybe best people on it, and maybe not all their best resources. And then year 4 is kind of a train wreck as you realize, like, oh man, they really don't care much anymore about this game. They just, and it's not because they don't like their game. The designer still loves the game. It's just they have so many other games by then because they're putting out a new game every summer, and year 5 is a total train wreck. So year 1, I knew would be awesome, and it was. It was glorious. And it was really as we got into year 2 that I started thinking, like, well, like, do I really want to keep doing this ride? I, like all of you, had hopes that, like, maybe FFG will treat this differently, right? It's a CCG. It's not an LCG. It's a money-making machine. Perhaps they will treat this differently. And it was year 2. Like, year 1 is such an exciting year. It's hard to tell. Year 2, I could really tell, like, no, they're not going to. Like, this is just how they handle games. And I just decided at that point, it didn't work well for my life. Like, I had a new career. I have a family. It's hard for me to say, like, okay, the one event 3 weeks from now, I have to make sure I can attend that. Card games work better for me if I can just say, like, I'm available February 3rd. Is there an event? And that's one of the main reasons why I started looking at Magic after I left Destiny. Not because I had this desire to spend tons of money on a card game, but because I really wanted that capability to just jump in when I was available. So that was a big part of it. Another big part of it was just FFG continuing to not take their games seriously. Like, they are... I've said this many times. I think FFG is a board game company that makes awesome games and chafes at the idea that they have to support them with organized play. Like, I think they have fun with it and it's neat to them, but they don't take it seriously, right? Like, they don't. And for example, I feel like a really good opportunity for FFG would have been something like, if you win Worlds, you get 6 boxes of the new set. Or the upcoming set even. We'll mail it to you early, so that's worth a ton of money. Instead, they just did the typical FFG, like, thanks for spending $1,000 to travel to Gen Con for our tournament. Here is a medal. And, like an alt art card and a mat. And it's kind of like, I mean, that's nice. Like, it's cool. I enjoy the prizes, but you're not taking your game seriously when that is the prizing. And it was very hard for me to continue putting and just pouring in the amount of time and energy and effort that I was pouring into Destiny, knowing that not only were they not taking it seriously, but it was only going to get worse from here. Like, I got out when it was still at its peak, essentially, and it would only be a downhill slide from there. Now, I was hoping that I would be wrong, right? I was hoping that I would get out of the game, and then it would suddenly balloon into this amazing thing, and then I'd probably just jump back in at some point. I kept all my cards. I'm still looking like the fool holding a whole nother game. I have like 5 full collections of dead card games from FFG, and Destiny is yet another one on my shelf, taunting me. Why didn't you sell this when you got out? And why didn't I sell it? Because I liked the game. It was fun. I didn't want it to sell it. Like, for instance, I jumped back in for a regional and top 4, like the biggest regional in the country, out of nowhere, and had an amazing time doing it, and thought, like, maybe I'll do that again sometime. Unfortunately, I didn't. But those were my hopes. Those were my dreams. Bottom line is, I really like Destiny. I really had a fun time with it. I'm going to miss it. And when I got out, it wasn't necessarily because I didn't like the game anymore. It was more just, I know the FFG trajectory. I understand how that works. Okay. Quick warnings and thoughts about the future. How do I say this? Like, it's going to be really hard for people to resist throwing their hand in the air and saying, I'm the one who's going to continue Destiny. The community needs to be really careful on this. Because if you choose the wrong people in the wrong group, especially if you choose people that don't get along and have really strong opinions and don't get along, it's not going to go that well. So I guess what I'm saying is the first person that posts on Facebook may be the right answer, and it may not be the right answer. I saw someone post just like an hour ago, good news, I'm gonna keep the game going and save it. And that person may be awesome, and they may be the right person. I don't know that person. But all I can say is take a cautionary approach there. Make sure that person is someone who can collaborate well and can build bridges, not a person who is a burner of bridges and someone who makes everyone angry in the community. Because if people don't buy in to what they're doing, there's only going to be one shot at it, right? Like, if it doesn't work out, it's not going to work well for the next person to be like, no, I'll be the person who will save the game. Because people are going to roll their eyes and be like, we already tried that. It was a total disaster. We spent another year with this dead game, and it didn't go well. So I guess all I'm saying is be careful who you let run the game that you love. Know that it's probably going to shrink. Know that you're going to lose a lot of your community, and you're just going to have to accept that. And now the game is just fun, right? Like, just have a good time with it. Try really hard to not let the people running it do things like what the Star Wars CC did, at least for a while, which was like, we're going to make these virtual cards, but it can only be put on top of this legendary or whatever. Don't do that. It's really kind of absurd for newer players who are like, hey, kind of want to play your dead game. And they're like, do you own 4 legendary Palpatines? Oh, then you can't play this virtual card we made up that you print. Don't do that. Whoever takes over, do not take that approach. Just make all the virtual cards available to everyone always. That is the way to do it. Trust me on that one. So thanks to everyone who watched my content, who reached out to me, who talked to me at tournaments. It was such a fun time. Thanks to anyone who was part of my Patreon page, all of that stuff. It was so fun. That was the hardest thing for me to walk away from, was that aspect of it. Knowing that I was going to play Magic meant my content creating days are essentially over. I mean, there's so many long-term established players. There's really no point in me making content. I've always said that the reason I make content is 2 things. I enjoy doing it. It's fun. But then also because it is helping the community. And I don't enjoy making content if it's not helpful, right? Like, if no one cares or there's a million other content creators, there's just not that much point in it for me personally. So it was really hard for me to walk away from this community that I had really had such a great time with and had supported me so well. And it really just did come down to, it was hard for me with where my life was going to be able to have the flexibility to be a part of a game that wasn't going to be well supported. Like, that just wasn't going to work out very well for me. This is actually the game I think that I've had the most success in as well, which was really fun in that first year. I played in 3 store championships, won 2 of them, only losing to, what's his name? I call him Voldemort. The artificery guy down in San Diego. You know who you are. You remember that game. Your Pomaz getting obscenely lucky. It's alright, it's alright. I'm still bitter about it, but it's alright. I'll never get over that one. Then I top 8'd that first Gen Con, teaming up with the Hyperloops guys. That was a lot of fun working with them. Losing to Joe, who eventually won it. Top 4, the only regional I played in, and then won the only Galactic Qualifier I played in. So I feel like it was a game that the time I put into it really paid off. I really had a great time. I know you all did as well, and I think we can mourn together today the loss of a really fun game that, boy, I think we all looked at it at first and thought, this has real promise here, right? This has real promise. If FFG really puts everything behind this, it might go somewhere. The problem, of course, is, and I don't blame FFG for this, it's so dangerous to just be like, we're printing 1 billion copies, right? It's more like, will this game be successful? I don't know. People haven't seemed to like it. I mean, one of the weird things for me is, like, I feel like I was like the only person who liked this game for quite a while. Team Covenant bought in then, but it was like a lot of naysayers out there saying dice and cards, this game is going to be so bad. And I wish that I had been able to hype the train up even earlier so that they could have pre-sold more, so they could have made more, so maybe there would have been less distributions at the problem, because that's the hardest thing, right? Like, you make this successful game, and then people are like, I want in, and you're like, oh, sorry about that, man. I didn't know it was going to be this good. Like, I hoped it would be this good, but I didn't know it would be this good. And then, you know, you lose a bunch of those initial people to the next hot game the next summer, and now you're like, I got 1 million packs of Spirit of Rebellion, but people aren't as interested anymore, and it's a real shame. Also, I just got to say this. I really didn't like Spirit of Rebellion. It's so hard for me. Like, when I fall in love with something, I don't want massive change. Like, I would have loved for Star Wars Destiny to just keep the Awakenings vibe and just keep putting out more cards. Like, Spirit of Rebellion almost felt like a whole different game to me, where it was like, because what I loved about Awakenings was back and forth, very chess-like, and Spirit of Rebellion was like, you took an action, I'll now take 12 actions, one of your guys is dead. And the action cheating for me was just so hard to accept. And it's interesting for me because I try to think about, like, how upset would I have been about action cheating if that would have been the first set. If that was just the norm, I probably would have been like, yeah, game's super fun. It's not an I go, you go game. It sometimes is, but it has this cool mechanic where sometimes the other person takes, 8 turns. But it was so hard for me to adapt not to adapt, but to enjoy it, because I adapted quite well. I won tournaments with Pomaz and had great success, but I didn't enjoy it as much. And I just always longed for the Awakenings days. And I realize that's a me issue, right? That's not an FFG issue. Of course, the game's going to grow and evolve. But just for me, that's what I really love, and that's what I'll always think about. Like, when I think of Star Wars Destiny, I'll always think about the Awakenings version. So I'm curious out there for all of you, now that we're saying goodbye, what is the part of the game that you're going to remember most? Is it the friends you met? Is it the successes you had? Is it the failures you've had? I mean, that's some of the places we grow the most. Is there a particular card or combination of cards you remember that you love? What set did you like best? I still remember the Unkar Trooper 9s? Was that what it was? Maybe Unkar 9 something. That was my favorite deck. I really, really loved it. I realized it wasn't quite as powerful as like Pomaz, and it wasn't as powerful as like the Rainbow Nines deck. But that Unkar deck that I had, I really, really enjoyed that deck. That was one of the few times in my life where I said, I know this probably isn't the best deck, but I'm going to play it anyway because I really love it. And I got second at that Star Champ with it. It still irks me. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to my very last episode of the Smugglers Den. For now, for Star Wars Destiny, I already rebooted this podcast. It was a Star Wars LCG podcast. So I guess I'm going to leave you with this. FFG, balls in your court. What's the next Star Wars game? Because I'm already ready to play it. Till next time. See ya.